Hello everyone, you know what we'll be doing, so let's begin. Third POV. Izuku turned his head as he was called out by the students from UAS1 and looked at them. They all looked at him and Bakugo still looked constipated with his emotions. He really needs to get some damn help if having the facts of his life thrown in his face makes him like that. Izuku thought. He motioned for them to speak since they were silent. And he wasn't honestly going to start any of this conversation or whatever they wanted. UAS1 is honestly disappointing in Izuku's eyes since the class has members that have broken the laws multiple times and have gotten away from actual punishment that most people would get charged with. Soon, Kirishimiya spoke up and asked him if he knew anything about what Izuku's classmates were talking about in regards to Bakugo. Izuku paused a bit at that question, and just sighed though before he could speak. Inasa spoke up instead. I can confirm for you that Bakugo is indeed an abuser that is only still in UA due to UA's current bad image. Anyway, shouldn't you all be getting to the exam since it's about to start, and if you aren't signed in on time you will be declined your chance to take it? Inasa said, and all of them widened their eyes and got moving quickly. Izuku and Inasa chuckled and headed off as well and made their way to their class and reminded them to not get too focused on the UA students and put the focus on passing instead, which they all nodded their heads at. After that, Izuku and Inasa made their way to the observation room where they found the second-year teacher watching as well. There were also teachers from other schools as well that had all arrived. Soon Eraserhead also arrived and sat down with all of the other people that accompanied the students from the hero schools. They all watched as all of the students were moved into the large gathering room and the Hero Commission official came onto the stage to start the exam. Mira looks tired as ever now, doesn't he, Inasa? Izuku joked as he remembered the man from their exam, and Inasa agreed that the man looked as if he needed to sleep. Good evening, students that are here for the provisional licensing exam, said Mira as he stood on the stage and talked. They explained that there were about 1,540 students in attendance for orientation. This exam used to have a 50% passing rate for participants, but due to recent events like Stain's arrest and All Might's retirement, the exam was modified to be much more exclusive in its vetting process, and now less than 10% of students can pass. The exam has a new focus on speed while encouraging teamwork and communication between participants. The new version of the exam hopes to only entitle the best students available in order to fill the gap left behind by All Might, said Mira with an upbeat tone which was surprising for the sleep-deprived man. All of the staff in the observation deck were shocked when they heard this, but Izuku nor Inasa were shocked. The staff noticed this and asked them if they knew. It was only logical for something like this to happen. The Hero Society is corrupt right now, and it's filled with people that only care about fame or money, which has caused a large rise in villains. Take Endeavor for example. Even though he's going to be the #1 hero, he is only getting that due to All Might's retirement, and no one will honestly think of him like that when they think of a true hero. Endeavor is the personification of a corrupt hero in my views, and he won't stay in the #1 position for the long term once people from my class and age graduate. Now, there are those that cause issues at my age, but hopefully their schools can fix them before they graduate, or they will get targeted by the changes in the society and will end up being dragged down quickly, Izuku said as he spoke, and Eraserhead knew some of those words were pointed at him in UAS1, a class with all of the stuff his class has pulled over the summer and past semester. Everyone nodded their heads and was silent as they watched the exam start. Soon the walls fell down just like it happened in Izuku's exam, and they found themselves in the same setup for the stadium as Izuku and Inasa did. The announcer explained the first round of the exam, which was a knockout system in reality, which was different from Izuku's exam where they had to capture villains with a minimum amount of damage. Everyone was given targets on their body that you had to get the last hit on to consider knocking the people out. You had to knock out at least 3 people to move to the next round, which meant that the numbers of people passing would be limited quickly since only 100 people could move to the next phase. The staff around Izuku was talking about the crushing of UA, and Eraserhead just smirked a bit, which Ms. Joke asked if he warned his students. Eraserhead said he didn't, and that if they couldn't handle being targeted as they would in reality, then they shouldn't pass. Ms. Joke asked if the Haiksu students would be aiming for the UA students, and the second-year teacher said they would be, but Izuku rolled his eyes. The second years might going after them, but I told my class to disregard them if they could and focus solely on passing. UA isn't Shiksu's concern. We have more pressing matters coming, like the upcoming war, Izuku said, and everyone including the second-year teacher was silent until Eraserhead asked a question on everyone's mind. You keep talking about an upcoming war, but we have no idea what you mean. What are you talking about? Eraserhead asked, and Izuku sighed. The fact that none of you realize what is about to happen in the near future is disappointing. Japan's society is about to undergo massive shifts and destruction. With the fall of All Might, all of the villains that hid and bid their time will now come out. Then there is also the League of Villains, which is still lurking, and if you honestly think they don't have the ability to cause destruction, then you are wrong. I give it a max of a year before we will start seeing entire cities being ransacked by villains or fall under their control as heroics will shift from small battles to large-scale war fronts. Shiksu High School has been starting to prepare for the upcoming fight since we've been investing in securing the campus and stocking large amounts of supplies in the event of sieges. We've also built bunkers underground as well to hide the students that don't have provisional licenses. Even UAS Principal Nezu has been preparing for the war as well. It's kind of why he allowed your entire class to go for the exam Eraserhead even though some of them shouldn't even be here. We don't have the luxury of not having bodies to throw in this upcoming war. Though the Commission is trying to prepare for it as well, they are not seeing the fact that it's closer than they realize, so trying to pump the industry with good heroes won't be enough since it won't make changes quickly enough to stop the large flow of villains and the public lack of support, which will threaten to topple the entire system, which will send the country into chaos. Isn't that right, Madam President? Izuku said as he reclined into his chair. Everyone was confused until they saw the president of the commission walk into the room with a neutral expression on her face. She walked over to where Izuku and Inasawa as they were watching the first stage of the exam go on. What everyone noticed when they looked was that all of Shiksu High School students have already passed the first stage of the exam and it's only been 5 minutes. The president of the commission ended up sitting down next to Izuku as one of her guards gave her some tea that they had prepared. They all sat in silence, and the staff from all of the schools were tense, but not Izuku nor Inasawa. They just sat there watching the exam progress, and soon the 100 people that passed the first stage were all through, and all of Shiksu High School students and UA students all passed the first stage. As they waited for the next stage to start, Madam President started to speak. League of Villain member Toga Himiko escaped police custody about 30 minutes ago, she said, and Izuku nodded his head. Expected. Until we capture the warp user, Kurogiri. We can expect them to keep breaking them out. We are just lucky none of the coordinates for the Tartarus prison are known, or we would have a dangerous amount of trouble. I'm hoping the detective can find someone with any clues on Kurogiri's location so we can stop him and remove the League's main transportation mode, which will make it easier to track them down since they can't escape quickly after he's locked up, Izuku said, and she nodded her head at his statement. Both of them knew that neither side liked each other, as Izuku represented everything All Might stood for, while the Commission has done a lot of things that Izuku doesn't agree with. Izuku noticed the tension that all of the other people had in the room, and he sighed. I doubt you came here to just talk about that. What is it that you are seeking, Madam President? Izuku asked, and the others all thought he was bold as hell to talk to the president of the Commission like that. She smirked a bit before speaking. It's clear neither of us gets along with each other, she said, and Izuku nodded his head and agreed. Indeed, so I am assuming you want to work some sort of balance out between us. I am what my father All Might represents, which means that you can't guide me like others nor my friends by extension due to how close they are to me, which provides them some protection. It's clear that as long as I keep pushing forward at my current pace, then I will achieve the title of #1 sooner rather than later, which means you can't guide the Hero Society as you would like. As such, we need a balance since I don't like the things the Commission does, but I know you're a necessary entity as well, Izuku said as he replaced some of his words like guide instead of saying control and ent instead of evil, which he was sure she clearly understood his true meanings. Indeed, it would be better for Japan's society if we aren't seen fighting against each other, so I would rather solve any disputes we have behind closed doors if you have any issues with something instead of taking it public if we have a vested interest in it. Agreeable, she asked, and he nodded his head and agreed since it would be easier to get stuff done if the Commission was willing to play ball with him. Izuku decided to give her some friendly advice though. Some advice, Madam President. I suggest cutting ties with Endeavor and getting on the side of bringing him down for the things he's done, which I am sure you are aware of. If you aren't, then I suggest looking into it. The reason I say this is because I am confident Dabai is Tauya Todoroki, which means everything Endeavor has done will come crashing down around him and might take you with him. We are going to have enough issues with the uprising of villains soon, and we don't need the entire commission collapsing the same time the villains rise up, Izuku said as he whispered Dabai's real name, and the president's eyes widened a bit at Izuku's warning, and she thanked him before standing up and starting to walk away. One more suggestion. It would also do good to loosen the leash you have on your bird, for you don't know how much will finally be too much, because you might just drive him to a point of no return, which would be bad for the commission as well, you know. Just suggestions from my viewpoint that you might want to consider for the long run. I would look forward to working with him as well, which could do us both good PR. Izuku said as he shrugged his shoulders, and the Madam President turned and looked at him in the eyes, and Izuku could see that she was kind of shocked that he knew about Hawk's situation, but her expression quickly changed to consideration as she nodded her head and thanked him once again and walked away, fully leaving the room. After a few minutes, everyone breathed a sigh of relief after she left and looked at Izuku as if he was crazy. "Did you just threaten and blackmail the commission?" Eraserhead asked, concerned. "No, we only came to a compromise to tolerate each other's existence since I tried to destroy them and they could try to destroy me. Neither side wants to deal with the fallout of the upcoming war, so we reached a balancing act that I have no idea how long it will last, but I will go with it as long as the commission is reasonable. I also only gave them actual advice with a few situations they have their hands in, since at a few situations that they should get ready for the fallout." Izuku was pretty damn sure Dabai was the missing Todoroki from his research. Izuku did a lot of digging into when someone's with Dabai's quirk appeared on the streets, which were around the time of the Great Fire that destroyed a forest, which was the same time Endeavor's oldest son went missing. Then, the way that Dabai has been fixated on Endeavor as well, and the blue fire which Endeavor can produce if he pushes it strong enough, all line up to Dabai being the missing Todoroki, since nobody was ever recovered, which in Izuku's mind means there was a good chance of him being alive after the fire that destroyed the forest all those years ago. Then there was the Hawk situation where the commission bought him as a child and trained him from a young age. Izuku hated that fact, but there wasn't much he could do without wiping the entire commission out in a damaging case, which with the future villain rising would mean destroying all of Japan likely as well. As such, Izuku could only hope to wait it out for now and get Hawk some more freedom by suggesting the Madam President loosen their grip on him, because he might rebel one day, which would be far more damaging with All Might gone now. Anyway, it was time to watch the rest of the exam since the second phase was now starting. After the entire conversation with the president of the commission, Izuku turned his full attention back to the exam itself. He was glad that his classmates took Izuku's advice and avoided the students from UA for the most part. The reason that Izuku said, "for the most part," is due to the fact that a Nagai Masakin who has the Fog of War quirk decided to play his hand near the start and used his quirk solely on the UA students for the first few minutes, which almost resulted in them getting knocked out since they only had one target left alive by the time each UA student finished the exam. Nagai Masakin had to drop his quirk since he needed to focus on passing, and the further away from the people he is using his quirk on, the more strain he gets overall, so he had to release it. Izuku knew that his class wanted to wipe the entire UA class out of the exam, and to be perfectly honest, Izuku would have loved to see it as well, but as Izuku keeps reminding himself and others, the war will sooner or later be upon them, and even though he hates to say it, the students from bnha UA are decent in strength, and will be a decent help somewhat in the war. Izuku has zero doubts in his mind that they could handle the UA students and flatten them, since they all have gone through some harsh training under Gran Torino has only kept upping the harshness of their training in the past month and a half. As such, Izuku was sure he would have a spar or tournament set up later on after the war for the public's entertainment, and to showcase the strength of the future heroes to help reassure the public. It would also serve as a good chance to display Shikstu's dominance over UA moving forward, since UA has enjoyed the spotlight for far too long in Izuku's view. It's time people start remembering that there are plentiful other hero schools, and that UA doesn't represent the core of the Japanese hero world anymore. The second phase of the exam was a rescue operation theme one, and Izuku had a feeling that there would most likely be some villains. This second phase seemed just like the one that Anasa and himself had to go through during their exams, which made sense due to the fact that they needed to know if the students could actually reduce people, which is a requirement of being a hero. They don't change the second phase of the exam much, do they? Izuku asked out loud, and everyone looked at him, and some asked what he meant. Well, the first phase was different from my exam, but the second phase is more or less the same. I kind of get it, since rescue operations can't really be made different for such a large exam. Though, our exam had real-life former villains for us instead of heroes who are taking part as the villains in this case, since I see Gang Orc coming from the distance, Izuku said as he pointed the stuff out, and they nodded their head. Izuku paid close attention to how his classmates were working together in teams and made good use of their quirks, like the Fog of War quirk was used on all of the villains, which bought the rescue teams time to escape. Though Gang Orc got around it via echolocation due to his quirk, which was interesting to see happen. But it was only him that got out of the effects of the quirks, and their class easily dispatched Gang Orc by working together and locked the hero down via several of them, pinning him until Ikebai Mitsube, who had the liquid stone quirk, had gathered enough earth and solidified it completely around Gang Orc, which captured him since he couldn't move enough to break out nor use his quirk to break it via vibrations, since he had to aim his head for the direction of the quirk to work, which stopped him from doing. Soon the exam came to an end and the results were announced. Everyone from Shiksu High School passed the exam, which Izuku was happy about, but he also noticed several UA students failed the exam. Those students included Katsuki Bakugo and Shouto Todoroki, which is sad because even Mineta the pervert of UA passed the damn exam, though the two did make enough points to qualify for the makeup exam during the winter break. That is just sad. The pervert ended up passing when 2 of 1A's top students failed. That has to be a large blow to both of their egos, but it was expected for them to both fail it since their attitudes are horrid when it comes to rescuing work. At least Mineta knows to keep himself under control, unlike them who argued with each other and said things in front of people they were meant to rescue. Inasa said, and Izuku just nodded his head at Inasa's statement while agreeing. Eraserhead was silent the entire time and didn't utter anything in regard to his students. Soon all of the staff, Izuku, and Inasa made their way outside where the students would be coming out of, and soon they did as Shiksu students from Wana all jumped on Izuku and Inasa and showed off their licenses. Good job, guys. Now, you just need to get your work studies lined up, which shouldn't be a huge issue since everyone had internships with decent heroes from the sports festival. Now get off because you're crushing me, Izuku said as they were all on top of him, making it hard to breathe without using his quirk. Soon they got off of him and they were all smiling. The UA students all came out a few moments later, and Izuku could see that Bakugo looked frustrated, but he wasn't exploding on everyone. Maybe this will be a hit that his ego needs to start tampering out, Izuku thought as he told everyone to start heading towards the bus so they could return, since they had a long drive ahead of them since they had to go to the furthest exam site away from the school. While they all got on the bus, Gran Torino was at the school on the phone. He was talking to the police detective Naomasa, who was calling about some movements of the League of Villains warp user Kurogiri. He also reported to Gran Torino that Toga had escaped from custody like they were afraid of, but there had been sightings of Kurogiri in a region as if he was looking for something. As such, Gran Torino was being informed since it would be time for him and Izuku to start getting involved in the case, since they had tracked the villain down to a certain region instead of all of Japan. Gran Torino thanked the detective for the information and informed him that they would start scoping the area out in the next week or so, since the school would be adjusting everyone's schedules to allow for work studies more. This meant there would be less in-class time for homework and learning and more do the homework when you got free time and self-study a bit as you need to go to your work study, but it was the price they were all willing to pay to get out on the field and get experience sooner. The detective thanked him and soon the call came to an end. Gran Torino sighed and looked at the clock. The brat should be getting back soon. All of those brats from Wana better have passed or I will beat the living shit out of them, Gran Torino thought as he ate some of his desert food, which he eats all of the time. Now, while this was going on, there was some other movement from other organizations as well. One such organization was called the Shai Haseka, and they were a nasty organization, but the true nature of what they were doing wasn't even known to the heroes yet. As far as the heroes looking into them knew, they were an organization that was selling the drug Trigger to other villains and people that were buying it, but they would soon find out the more horrifying details of what they were doing in the dark shadows, as Sir Nightai would lead a team of heroes that would pry the lid on their operations and discover the truth, which will result in them calling in more heroes to put a stop on their operations. With that, guys, I hope you enjoyed this short video, and see you next time. Bye bye.